Thank you so much. I hope you're still all awake. You look a bit tired, but I hope we can wake you up. So, the legacy we leave to our future generations should be a sustainable, self-sufficient tomorrow. Arctic just had its warmest winter in years, and the Arctic temperatures have risen for winters in a row. As per the data available in the US, 39% of the CO2 emission is from buildings alone. We would like to share some of our projects of varying scale and how we are looking to embed sustainability into our architecture. Green architecture should be performance-based and also elegant. It is these two aspects that we are looking into to combine through our designs. We believe in performance-based aesthetics. The design philosophy is to create integrated design solutions, amalgamated, efficient, and robust, leading to performative architecture. We believe performance is the design driver to achieve sustainable buildings. The first project is Punjab KSV headquarters, looks at integrating traditional Indian patterns with sustainability as the main design driver, and hereby respond to the harsh climatic condition of Delhi. The site is located close to Delhi in a city called Noida, in a zone with small industrial and commercial buildings. The site is visible from the main road and from this urban corner when approaching from both sides. This is the view from the urban corner. Although being in Delhi, northern capital region, the surrounding has a suburban character. Buildings are mostly in an unfinished look. These buildings have no character and could be anywhere. That's why we wanted to be more contextual to traditional Indian architecture. Design evolution takes into account different parameters. The design brief was to maximize the total built-up area. This is the base volume we can achieve after the setbacks and the fire tender movement. We lifted a building in the back for additional parking. As the volume is very deep, we added a central atrium and the urban window to the main road. And as a response, a welcoming entrance is formed. Due to the harsh local climate, we wanted to design a solar-responsive facade. As an urban response, this welcoming entrance condition is designed, which morphs into the atrium as one volume, creating an urban lobby and a communication hub. We have segregated vehicular entrance exits. For the facade design, we wanted to be contextual to Indian architecture. These perforated screens are extensively used in traditional architecture and monuments because they let light in and block the sun. The proposed facade should resonate traditional Indian patterns, thereby creating a fusion of traditional and contemporary architecture. The inspiration was to translate a traditional Indian facade pattern by using digital simulations into an iterative process to create a responsive build form. This traditional Chali screen creates culturally a sense of belonging. We started simulating the facade to make it solar responsive. It's calculating the window-wall ratio of each facade, considering the light from the atrium as well. You see in the upper right window the live update of each elevation. The goal was to shade the facade and achieve an ID lux level. Then we were looking at traditional facade screen patterns and how to achieve the ratio in a gradient pattern. A hexagonal pattern was used as a base, and with scaling and overlapping, we generated various porosity patterns to create different light conditions. This is the pattern catalog we can achieve with overlapping and scaling technique. The simulation was running over 2 weeks in our office. The output is a differentiated opacity condition over the facade. The resulting pattern morphs from 81% opacity to the north over 54, 27 on the south, and then 62 on the east. Below is the base pattern, which blends into each other. We are able to reduce the heat gain by over 42% and achieve a lux level of 500 on the height of the desk. The required equipment for the MEP load reduced and the air conditioning load is much less. This results in an animated facade pattern with a gradient porosity. Through heat gain reduction, the air conditioning load is substantially reduced, which is a very big factor considering the outside temperatures. So this is the view from the urban corner. The overview image is the atrium skylight and sense of invitation, whereby the landscape lines are flowing inside the building. The entrance to the building is designed as a seamless element with the light lines on the floor, guiding the movement of the visitor. A typical ground floor entrance, showing the linear core, the atrium. The atrium is designed as a play of light and shadow, and with the floating staircase. So sustainability is at the epicenter of the project, embedded natural lighting and photovoltaic on the roof, cross ventilation, reduction of heat gain, different program, and the core accessible green terrace. The central atrium on a typical floor, connecting the various levels, creates a visual porosity between people working on different floors. The typical floor with a linear core as efficient as possible. The design brief required office spaces ranging from 500 to 2,000 square meters. So this flexibility is embedded in the planning by being able to subdivide the floor plan. A possible office layout of a small rented out unit. Designed on a BIM platform, the diagram shows the various elements of the building. With the office spaces at the periphery on all floors, central atrium in the core, and the basement for parking and services. These are the facade components. We have a floor-to-floor glazing and a cleaning corridor to access and maintain the facade, and a GRC screen in front. The screen is made of glass reinforced concrete panels, which will be fabricated in the workshop to achieve a much higher precision. The project was commissioned in 2014 and started construction in 2015. The main entrance view and the view into the atrium, from a typical floor into the atrium. The structure has been designed in a very simple manner to execute, accounting for the construction execution quality in India. And the complexity of the project is embedded in the facade elements which come from the workshop. View towards the main entrance is a 28-meter column-free span. Few more views of the current situation. Unfortunately, it was held up with a dispute from the client and the contractor, but now it's up to speed again. Few more views from the urban corner, from the main road, southwest corner. Overview with the atrium skylight, the main entrance merging into the atrium, play of light and shadow. And the working in an optimum lux level condition. Slow gradient from the north towards the corners, and the impression by night. Now Amit will continue.
So through some of the next projects which we'll be showing you, it's about sustainability at various scales. So what we showed was an office building. The next project is a hospitality building. So in our office, we're doing a couple of hotels. And hospitality and offices are some of the biggest energy-consuming buildings on the earth. So the idea for us is in a place like India where the heat load is very high given the temperatures of 45 to 48 degrees. So the first one is a business hotel in Lucknow, which is north part of India. So here through the initial scenario analysis, we're looking at the design project. And one of the facades of the project is a south-facing facade. So what we see here is the heat gain analysis on a typical, the average yearly heat gain analysis. And through iterations and through iterative design, we were trying to reduce the heat gain. So the final option which we came up with, so we're just showing the heat gain reduction. So we reduced the heat gain by 42% in the design. So the idea is that through design, we reduce the heat gain and not just through specifications and detailing. So this is just the iteration. So through this horizontal ribs, which come out at these triangular ribs, and then a horizontal member comes out on the top. So you can see the variation in the color. It starts going from reds to blues. So what in effect it's showing in a layman's language is 42% reduction in the south-facing facade. So the idea is really to embed design and sustainability as one, to integrate them as one rather than being as an afterthought. And then in this vertical ribs, what we have is a local pattern, this Charlie pattern, which is made in a prefabricated concrete blocks, which creates a design of the facade. It's a business hotel, so it's a 3-point circulation system. And again, we use the patterns on the roof to create a play of light and shadow in the design. And this is the north-facing facade. So it's this dichotomy of the north-facing with a very simple facade because there's no direct sunlight, and the south-facing has the pattern on it. Another hospitality building, it's a very small hotel as compared to the other one. So this is 20 rooms. It's a boutique hotel, again in north of India. So one another thing we have to account for, apart from sustainability, is the chaos of the city. So unlike European cities or maybe Malaysia, there's a lot of unknown which we have to design for in India. So the idea was that within this complexity of the surroundings, we come up with a very simple form which sits in the surroundings. So instead of a very strong intervention, we wanted to do a very simple one. Here again, using a solar analysis, so the basic form was cued in plan. So what we see here in the right diagram with the triangles, so we have split the every room grid, one side glass and one side a stone facade. This is the initial building volume if we just extrude this vertically. And this is what we get after the analysis. Here we are again reducing around 40% heat gain of the building. So the idea is really to embed these two things together. The form, sustainability, structure, everything comes together. This is our initial rendering which we did for the project. And we wanted to use, so it's in an area which is very close to local, we have a very good local sandstone which is available there. So we started looking at some of the examples from India, from outside India, how people have been playing around. And for ease of execution, we came up with these 8 modules, which are repeated, and this is what we use to execute the entire facade of the project. These were some initial studies of how the gradient can be with these 8 components. So this is the initial rendering which we did, and this is a building, I think, 6 months ago. So they started putting the facade up. It's a 2-side axis, one side is retail, one side is reception, and then the rest of the building is a hotel building. So this is the initial rendering, and this is how the building was. It's coming up. Again, we have to also look at the construction techniques. So sustainability is not just about solar analysis, it's also about the materials which we're using. Steel is not the primary source of construction in India. We are still using concrete. So that's what we are playing with. And the restriction of the design is with concrete right now, with the designs what you're doing. In the right image, you see a bit of the pattern which the contractor started putting up on the facade using a water jet pattern on a natural stone. Now, speaking of sustainability, the room which we have designed, it's a 28 square meter room. But the interesting thing is how it was executed on site. So the bed, which is a very curvilinear bed, a freeform bed. So for this, it was executed, what the client did, the shuttering which was used for execution, he used the shuttering, and that he used for the subgrid of the bed. So it's about really recycling things. It's not about wasting things. It's about trying to use as much as we can and implement in the design. And a lot of POP work was done on site. So it's really trying to create contemporary forms with the techniques and with the techniques which are available in terms of execution. Again, with the lobby, we are trying to play with a very simple light. So again, north of India is very famous for light fixtures, so you can get any kind of light fixture made there. So we have come up with this one fixture, which is repeated 3,000 times, and just the height of the fixture is different. Now coming to residential, sustainability, we always speak about future, which is a theme here, but to look into the future, it's very important to look in the past also. So for this villa project, our idea was to delineate the outside and inside boundary and to create a fuzzy boundary condition. The project is located in Delhi, which is very hot. For this, we started looking back. So these are some images from old Indian courtyard typologies, which were based on this kind of a system of evaporative cooling and naturally ventilated systems. This is another image of a shallow water body. So as I said earlier, to look forward, at times it's good to look back. You don't have to reinvent everything. You should learn and understand the systems which were available and implement them in the designs. So this is the orientation of the building which is available to us. So what we did was we interlocked the build form and the water body into each other, rotated the form, and created this kind of interlocking move in the end. And then, so this is the overview, how the building and the landscape integrate with each other. And the pool itself also helps in evaporative cooling, which cools down the spaces around the living areas on the ground floor. Furthermore, the depth of the cantilever was what we studied to stop the summer sun from coming in and letting the winter sun in. So in India, at least the Indian projects which we're doing, sun is a very important factor which we have to really look at. Here in 30 degrees, it's hot. I think when we go back, it'll be 35, 38, and in the summer, it'll be 45, 48 degrees. So sun is a very important component. Either you can fight it or you can use it. So this is what we're looking to really integrate this in the design. This is a view from the inside, where the inside and outside really merge into each other. Some more views of the design by night. Now, in terms of sustainability, this is a bit different take. It's not about the elements of nature. It's about, again, execution technique. It's a very small living room. So the space itself was split into two. So the design idea was to create two different islands which connect to each other. So what we see on the left and the right, so these are the two spaces which interlock with each other. And then the wall becomes a bench, becomes the table. So it's really about interlocking the curves. This was done 7 years ago. And if I would have done this project in Europe, then we could have done easily CNC milling, or we could have used any number of contemporary techniques. But there, another concern was the scale of the project is small, so the contractor cannot be a very big one. We got only 2 carpenters with some hand tools. So we did a rib model, and what you see on the floor is one of the tools which they used. So it was really about sustainability at all scales, even in terms of execution. So the technique which we had, we tried to use it. And it was also an experimental project for us in terms of understanding how to execute things in India to go with these contemporary forms. And this was the end result. I don't have some of the other images. It was a big mess, this room, when they were making it, because everything was done on site. So even the ellipses, it was full of ellipses and full of these sections. But in the end, the result is what we wanted. So the technique did not really matter to us. It's really the final result. So you can do high end or low end, but it's only about the result which matters in the end. So everything was custom made. Even the carpet was customized, the table, sofa, everything. And most of the things were done in the space. So sustainability at the scale of a furniture. To create contemporary forms, we can do CNC milling, we can do molding, we can do a lot of things, which results in wastage of material. When we said we like to look back in the past, so we looked at the technique of kerfing. Kerfing is a technique where with a simple cut in the wood, you start creating bends in the wood. So what you see here is on the top. So we did some analysis on, we had to study the nature of the wood in terms of the grain. Is it along the grain, against the grain? And the spacing of the distance between these curving patterns, and also which direction it is. So the idea was to create this two-dimensional curved object, which is actually floating just by the cutting patterns. So the curvature comes from the cutting patterns, which we developed in, so we had to do some scripting to achieve this. What you see here on the top are some failed examples, and a lot of research went into the wood also, which wood we should use. So in the end, the result was we had a sustainable product which we wanted in terms of minimum wastage of the material. So this entire block, this entire slab of wood is actually what we used, and only the cutting of the ribs, which we see the slices, is the only material which was wasted. So in the bottom is that drawing which was given to the carpenter. It was a very easy to understand drawing. It's just a bunch of lines and the spacing, and that's it. There's not even a depth difference in the lines. So this is the drawing which they put on the bed, and they just cut the plank into this. So it's a very interesting image because at times architects are told that the initial result is something different and the final result will be much worse. So actually somehow we did the other way around. Our concept design looks not so good and the reality is the bottom image. So it's very important to work through the concept and really try to make sure the final image looks better than the concept image. So now this is one of the last projects, jumping scales from the scale of a little bench. It's a master plan. It's a 600-acre master plan located in north of India, Kanpur. So here what we did was we started looking at the patterns of Ganga. Ganga is a holy river. The project is located on the banks of the river. So the project is a redevelopment project. And what we see here are the slums. It's a slum area, and the purpose of the project is to clean Ganga. This is where all the tanneries are located, and it really pollutes the water it pollutes Ganga. So for this, we had a very strong city grid, and we wanted to integrate this into a fluid riverfront. So what is not clear is black is actually blue on the top. So what you see on the top is the Ganga. So we are next to the waterfront. So based on this, we use CFD analysis, not as a study tool, but as a design tool. So through iterative design and running the CFD analysis, we got some design parameters, which was based on attractor points. So all these pink dots which you see are the existing monuments on site, which we try to retain. And along this, we create the patterns of Ganga. So we got a very fluid riverfront, which is a bit more mixed use. And the strong city grid was brought into the riverfront. So it's amalgamation of the very strong city grid into this fluid riverfront. The overall image now, in terms of sustainability, we have these green belts, which are coming from inside the city and terminating in these elliptical towers. So it's, in terms of transport, we have various modes of transport which are overlapped and they're segregated. So you have vehicular-free pathways from the city coming to the outside. The skyline of the project we are trying to control in terms of the FSI. So since we have to do urban design guidelines, the way we control the heights of the building is by the plot area, the size of the plot. So it's a very mundane exercise which we had to go through, but somehow in the end we managed to control the height blanket of the buildings. And these are the two buildings which mark the gateway to the city. Now the last project is a perfume park and museum. It's a very interesting project. It's a project which is based on a twin city agreement between city of Kannauj, which produces the essence of a perfume. So what you see here at the top right, and this page is about this little town in India, which is one of the only two places in the world which creates the essence which makes perfume. And between grass. So it's a twin share agreement where the two cities will do skill development centers. So we are trying to go from this to this to create a high-end product, so the people who are producing this essence of the flower, they become a major partner in terms of the production of the perfumery, and they don't get a very small share in it. So yes, what you see here on the left is how it's done right now. It's a very old technique, traditional technique. So for us to create a perfume park, it was a very interesting project because it somehow relates very closely to nature. So what we did was we started looking at a flower, but we did not want to be very literal. We did not want to make another lotus temple or a design which becomes too much about flowers. So here we use the Fibonacci series, which is the essence of a flower. If you look very closely, it's the series which controls the patterns of a flower. And this is what we start simulating. So at the epicenter of the design is a museum project, and then the grid starts radiating out. One of the requirements from the client was to have flower beds next to the museum, So I just skip. So in the center is the museum, and then we required flower beds, and the outside grid has to be buildings. So the idea was to integrate the pattern of the flowers with the buildings. So it's one master plan. It's a city grid which can amalgamate and go from a very small scale to a very big scale. The entire site area is around 50 acres. So these are the images from grass, what we're trying to achieve in Kannauj. And the building itself was just 3 petals, which are integrating with somehow goes with the idea of trying to create a flower, but not really a flower. So here we can see it's these little pockets which you see next to the central petals. This is where they're growing flowers for the perfumes. And on the periphery, we have some factories, we have some information skill development centers, and a hotel. So this project has been developed as a net zero building. The entire project is a net zero project. And of course, we had a very deep cantilever so that the inside outside merges into each other, and also these cantilevers are helping us in cutting down the sun. Thank you.